Hi, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hi, everyone. This is Christina from Black Tea News, and I am Black Tea. I am Black Tea News. But thank you for tuning in. Today, we're going to talk about something that, honest to God, has me very disturbed today. The Daily Wire broke a story. Great reporting on them. It's mostly it is pretty much behind their paywall, but people have been reporting it, and hopefully, a lot of people talk about it because we know the mainstream media will try to suppress it, as they have been trying to suppress stories like these and to shape it into whatever they want it to be. But in Loudoun County in Virginia, you've had people very concerned about these school board meetings. Very concerned parents have been going to the school board meetings, been talking about critical race theory that's been on the school, and they've been talking about their transgender policies where they want boys who believe they're girls to be able to go in the girls' locker room, etc. And so at one point in time, there was some parents have been arrested. And so one father who was arrested at one of these meetings, his daughter was sexually assaulted by a boy who likes to wear a skirt and he's gender fluid, I suppose. And apparently this boy, activists there were telling him, we don't believe you. They shut him down, didn't want to listen to him, and so on. Turns out this boy assaulted another young girl. So they broke out in this story, and so a lot of people were talking about it today, especially people from the Daily Wire, and Ben had a pretty extensive show when he was talking about it today. But I wanted to touch on it because there's so many things going on in this particular county, but it's happening in other counties across America. And if people don't stand up against it, we're going to see a lot of things get worse really fast. But just to think about this father, how he's trying to protect his daughter, trying to let people know, and they painted him as a villain. You have school boards writing, to the Justice Department, asking them to do something, acting as if these parents are domestic terrorists, and them issuing things. There's no specific charges, but they're like, oh, issuing things like, oh, we're going to look into this. Well, even threatening administrators is bad. If anyone is doing that, obviously that is terrible, but that still doesn't give federal authority. That would be local authority. So what is the Biden administration trying to do other than intimidate these parents, just in general? So you have someone who was just trying to protect his daughter, stand up for his daughter, and he was knocked down and um, made fun of, ostracized, painted like a psychopath in mainstream media, pretty much. And he was just trying to get the words out, and people who pretend like they believe all women didn't believe his daughter, try to pretend like nothing like this happens, um like they don't have any stuff like this going on, knowing good and well that the school board was lying and covering these sort of things up. So it's important to talk about. And it reminds me of some other things that commentators said in the past, like Chris Cuomo, and I'll mention that as well. And these people know this is a bad policy, but they're so stuck on ideology that they want to just beat that drum, and they don't care what sort of collateral damage there is. And they don't care if it hurts girls, they don't care if it hurts boys, they don't care if they have to demonize fathers. What do they care about fathers anyway? It seems like they don't really like them. And they don't like moms too. If you're like a traditional mom, if you're like a, I don't know, single mom hitting the lesbian field or something, like, you're cool. Like, you're like the new mom on not the new mom, but on Rugrats, they changed Phil and Lil's mom and dad. Howard is, they're not married anymore. They're not married anymore, the parents. They're like, Howard who? I'm like, you mean the children's father? Because women can't just make babies spontaneously on their own. Fathers are still very important in our society today. So we're going to talk about this story and some other things with this county. They've had some issues for a while, and um, there's a really tough race in Virginia right now. They're going to send Obama to try to see if the Democrats can win this. And it should be an easy win for Democrats because there's a lot of people in DC who live over in Virginia who basically, pollute the voting pool. So it's pretty blue. So people are concerned because the Republican looks like he has a pretty good fighting chance. And so we'll see if this race ends up in a big upset, which will kind of determine like if it's DEFCON 5 for Democrats across the country with elections. And even if they see if it is, are they going to even pull back and rearrange some of their thinking? Are we moving too fast, too radically too fast, or are they going to double down? Are they, because they're not totally crazy. They have really bad policies and very bad plans. But are they totally bonkers? There's people in their party who are totally bonkers for sure. But there are some moderates who don't want to lose all power because they need to finish up a couple more things before they can feel pretty satisfied that they can have power forever. But we'll get more into it. But really quickly, I want to encourage you all to go to blacktnews.com to check out different content I have on the website. Please share different articles that I have on the website. And if you like what I do here, I ask that you do consider supporting. You can go to blacktnews.com/donate. You can leave a gift by PayPal. You can do it with if you don't have a PayPal account, you can just do it by debit card. If you would like to support, I would appreciate it. There's a lot of things I'd like to do at blacktnews.com, and the more help I get, the faster I can get there. So if you like watching this here, if you like the articles, you like the website, and so on, please consider leaving a donation and helping us spread. I was almost said the gospel, but I'm a preacher though, but yeah. Just getting some more truth out there, because that's really, I do what I do. People ask me, why do I do what I do? Because it's important that we break through this media barrier. If we don't, I don't care what you do, we won't win elections. So it is important to talk about the story that Daily Wire broke. It's important to talk about how critical race theory is absolutely in these schools. And even some of these schools that have forbidden it, teachers found a way to try to go around it. So it's important to talk about these issues. It's important to talk about, even though this topic today upsets me so much, it's important to talk about it because people need to know, because people need to spread the word to other people so they know that we are teetering on the edge. So please consider supporting blacktnews.com. Check out different merchandise that I have. I mentioned yesterday that I had some fall stuff with the pumpkin spice, the pumpkin spice season mugs. I got them in red, orange, and black with that chibi Trump. I did draw that, by the way. I did draw that. So one day when I'm a huge artist, you're gonna have the little Trump chibi and just look like a genius because your cup is worth so much. So go ahead and pick up that cup, so you can enjoy your fall beverages in them. It doesn't have to only be for fall. You can keep it the whole year, but go ahead and get that. And I do also have those in shirts. So those are unisex shirts. So just because I have ladies on there doesn't mean that you cannot get those. And I have other merch, of course. I got the My Money, My Business. And I told you guys at the end of the show that Facebook, my sister tried to do an ad for that one. And she also tried to do an ad, I think, for one of my goat hoodies. And they would not let her do it. And she's an admin for the page. But they said you have to be verified to do things like that because it contains political stuff that could influence different audiences and change people's opinions. And I'm just like, good, that's exactly what I want to do. Like, why are you gatekeeping so much? And they're like, we need to know exactly who's paying for it, like the person with the credit card on file. Like, you see my account, you see, like, what do you mean it's for the page? So it's really interesting that they're like, we can't just let you buy ads that could influence people's opinions. And so my sister was like sitting right next to me as I was doing my show. You can see her; she was off screen, but she's just like, I see ads for Planned Parenthood all the time on my phone. I'm just like, and so they I don't know. They pick and choose, but anyway, you can go get that My Money My Business shirt. Facebook doesn't want you to have it, so I definitely think you should get it. And I made that specifically cuz I'm sick of people with a pro choice side saying my my body my choice. It's like, no, if you're trying to get rid of the Hyde Amendment, you're trying to fund Planned Parenthood through tax dollars, that stuff is everyone's business because you want us to pay for it. You want us, our dollars to go into it. So I'm at least going to be part of the conversation. And regardless of paying for it anyway, or our taxpayer dollars going into it, I'd still say there's a great moral harm to society with abortion anyway. So I think it's still everybody's business. um I think just because you're not witnessing or actually a part of a brutal killing that you can't speak up about it being wrong, like that is such a bizarre talking point to me. But you can get that shirt. It's available at blacktnews.com. So I don't really have a funny meme today. I wanted to talk about a comedian though. I saw this quote from Dave Chappelle. One of my friends had posted on their page about how he supports everyone's right to who they want to be, but he wants to know, like, how much can we actually do we have to give into that delusion. So that's you know I think a lot of people feel that way, and he's not afraid to ask the tough questions. And comedy is supposed to be controversial at times. There's supposed to be like a little bit of truth to it, and you push borders and boundaries so people can have conversations. So people really mad at Dave Chappelle because he did a special and um he talks about a lot of stuff, but he talks about the LGBT in it. And at one point there he in the skit, he was not the skit, but his bit, he was like, "Dave, they're after you." He's like, "They? You talking about one they or lots of they?" So I haven't seen the whole thing. I've just seen bits and pieces of it. But and he's saying he's just really telling like common sense stories in funny ways. Like they don't the jokes aren't even like, at least from what I saw, aren't even very reaching. They're just like, I'm gonna tell this common sense thing in a humorous manner. Um and it is what it is, but people are upset about it, wanted him canceled, and they wanted him canceled and were mad at him before, but they seem really, really mad this time. But what does Netflix care? People are watching it, they're getting views. They wouldn't have aired it if they didn't, or let it go, air if they didn't think they were going to make money and keep their subscriptions and other stuff like that. So what do they care? I mean, they survived the cooties uh grossness. So Netflix doesn't really care about backlash. As a matter of fact, when the He-Man thing broke out, there was a controversy about He-Man. We did talk about it on the show. And He-Man wasn't really my show, it was my brother's show. I did watch that show that came out in, was it 2011? It was on Toonami. But they like killed He-Man like in the beginning of the show, and they made it really about the ladies and stuff, and all the men were like dying or incompetent or useless or whatever in the show. So definitely had their own kind of feel that they're going for. And so a lot of fans were mad. And so Kevin Smith, who had lied to the fans about the how much involvement or whatever He-Man would be, and so on, he was just laughing at other people like Netflix does not care about fans and bad reviews. Like, they have that fact. I don't even know if they have it factored in. They just don't care. So at least I guess they still don't care about Dave Chappelle. And there's some very angry Netflix employees. There was a story that broke out today about that, but they don't care. He said he's not gonna do another one for a while, I guess, but I'm sure he'll probably end up doing another one at some point. And this isn't a topic that he's just gonna not talk about, especially since he can keep making jokes and things will keep being funny and he'll keep getting buzz. Um, but my sister did say that he talked about COVID at one point and said it wasn't really a big deal for him. And so she said that's probably why people are putting a little extra emphasis on Dave, because people don't like when you undermine COVID. But it is they really don't. Like, I did a very neutral video on TikTok about COVID, because someone said, "Are you for the vaccine or against the vaccine?" I said, "There's really no right or wrong answer for you personally. You just got to choose the best decision for you." But I said the only thing that's really messed up is people trying to force you to do it, and the parents who are very, I don't know, hyper terrified and want their kids to have it so bad. Like their sense of reality is very skewed. Because and um showed like a graph. I'm like, it's not even like that big of a deal for kids. Like the flu is legitimately more dangerous for kids with COVID. So someone got mad and and said all these comments, and I replied to them. I'm just like, there was nothing that I said. It was very neutral. I said, if you're older, you should probably consider getting it. I talked about comorbidities and a bunch of kind of different stuff about it. So I let people know the information on both sides. It was like the most neutral video I have done probably on COVID across like TikTok and on here talking about it. And people still didn't like it because people are angry if you don't just go along with the program. And I don't know if it's just because there's so many terrified people that are like, well, mine's not going to work if you don't get it. I'm like, what? Cures work like that? Okay. um and I don't know if it's just because they were forced into it, so they want you to be forced into it. They don't like that you haven't bowed down and they've bowed down, or if they're just control freaks themselves. So it's probably one of those three reasons, and I did address those three reasons in my reply, but people do not like you not going along with the program. So I don't know. They did mostly talk about the trans stuff, but they could have been upset about that too. But yeah, Netflix doesn't care. They're making their money, they're making bank, and if they can have 9-year-olds doing twerking on in such a disgusting manner with the cuties thing. And they've had other sexual scandals on Netflix. Actually, I did a article on that too. Their top biggest sexual scandals. Because there was a couple with Netflix. You can check that out on blackteennews.com. But Dave Chappelle's a funny guy. Just all around. Don't always agree with Dave, but he's a funny guy, and he's sticking up for his craft. And there's not enough comedians sticking up for the craft. And so that's unfortunate, but he's got to keep doing what he's doing. So anyway, let's get to the big story of the day. So I don't know if you guys remember these pictures or remember the story, but like I said, in Loudoun County, there were parents who were very concerned about like critical race theory. There's parents very concerned about the gender bathroom stuff, and they act like these people are crazy, that these sort of things wouldn't happen, like there wouldn't be any sort of violence. So this particular parent, Scott Smith, he had a daughter who was assaulted, and people didn't really believe him or really wouldn't listen to him. Someone straight up told him they didn't believe his daughter, didn't believe the story. So it's come out that this person who because they did end up like reporting it, and this kid who is gender fluid, this boy who allegedly assaulted his daughter, assaulted someone else as well. So the Daily Wire, kudos to them, major kudos to them, broke this story. They've been very focused on this county with various different stories going on. Actually, Matt Walsh ended up going to this county to speak, and he had to rent out I think a woman's basement for a little while for like $1 so he could be a citizen or have some kind of property there. So because they were jumping through all these hoops trying to get people to not be able to speak, and they had to bring ID, make sure they had IDs, even though IDs are racist and all this other kind of stuff. So it was very hard for people to end up speaking. Actually, I do have a little clip of Matt Walsh's speech. I'm going to play that before I get into this story.
I would thank you all for allowing me to speak to you tonight, but you tried not to allow it, yet here I am. Now, you only give us 60 seconds, so let me get to the point. You are all child abusers. You prey upon impressionable children and indoctrinate them into your insane ideological cult, a cult which holds many fanatical views, but none so deranged as the idea that boys are girls and girls are boys. By imposing this vile nonsense on students to the point even of forcing young girls to share locker rooms with boys, you deprive these kids of safety and privacy and something more fundamental too, which is truth. If education is not grounded in truth, then it is worthless. Worse, it is poison. You are poison. You are predators. I can see why you try to stop us from speaking. You know that your ideas are indefensible. You silence the opposing side because you have no argument. You can only hide under your beds like pathetic little gutless cowards, hoping we shut up and go away. But we won't. I promise you that. Thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you again very, very soon.
You know, that's, I guess it's pretty ominous when he's like, you'll be hearing from me again, and knowing that they have broke out this story too. So, because they didn't have a lot of time to speak. So basically he was just like, you guys suck. You guys are gutless cowards, you're predators, and so on. And this isn't the end. And it really isn't the end. And like I said, it's very important that people spread the story, because I don't know how many mainstream people will talk about it. They're fine, showing pictures of fathers and so on being arrested, pictures like this. But were they comfortable talking about what actually happened? No. And will they talk a lot about this story? Probably not. When there's uncomfortable stories for the left and it's in the media and they feel compelled to talk about it, they'll talk about the right's reaction to it rather than just reporting the story. It's very bizarre, but maybe it's not bizarre anymore, because this is how they operate. That's what they like. When Northam, the governor right now of Virginia, that's a blackface. Well, we don't know if it's blackface. He could have been the guy in the Klan outfit, the yearbook photo. We're not sure, because it was definitely him in one of the photos, but he wouldn't say specifically. So he's either the blackface guy or the Klan man. But the current governor right now of Virginia, when he was on a radio program and they were talking about abortion, and if a child survives abortion, he said that they would talk to the family, and if the family wants it, then they would just would kind of determine whether or not the baby would get care, which is monstrous. Like, if the poor thing survives an abortion, you can at least, and if it can survive it, you can at least provide it medical care. You could be like, you know what, you're a contender or something. Like, there's people out there who would love on that child, adopt that child, and you're like, you can talk to, like, you wanted just to finish it off, like. So that's what they was like. He was talking about, like, in a radio interview, and the mainstream media pretty much played it down. The right talked about it like nonstop, and then the story became about how the right was reacting to it rather than, oh, this is a very monstrous thing that they're talking about. So this state has a lot of problems, you could say. So let's get into a little bit of the story. I'm reading a little bit of the story. On June 22nd, Scott Smith was arrested at Loudoun County, Virginia, a school board meeting, a meeting that was ultimately deemed an unlawful assembly after many attendees vocally opposed a policy on transgender students. What people did not know is that weeks prior, on May 28th, Smith says a boy allegedly wearing a skirt entered a girl's bathroom at a nearby Stonebridge High School, where he sexually assaulted Smith's 9th grade daughter. Juvenile records are sealed, but Scott's attorney, Elizabeth Lancaster, told the Daily Wire that a boy was charged with 2 counts of forcible sodomy, 1 count of anal sodomy, and another count related to an incident that day at school. As a result of the viral video showing his arrest, Smith became the poster child for what the National School Board Association has since sorry, I lost my place for a second. Has since suggested could be a form of domestic terrorism, a white blue-collar male who showed up to obscure public servants on their local school board. If someone would have sat and listened for 30 seconds to what Scott had to say, they would have been mortified and heartbroken, Lancaster said. Minutes before Smith's arrest at the school board meeting, the Loudoun County Public Schools superintendent lectured the public that the concerns about the transgender policy were misplaced because the school system had no record of any assault occurring in any school bathroom. Then a woman wearing a rainbow heart shirt, a left-wing community activist, told Smith she did not believe his daughter, he says. His rage reached a boil, and he had a heated exchange of words with the woman. A police officer there to keep the peace in the meeting, pulled on his arm. Smith yanked it away. Before he knew it, Smith says he was hit in the face, handcuffed, and dragged across the floor with his pants pulled down. Images of the incident were splashed on television and newspapers across the world. Buddha Bajira, the county's progressive top elected prosecutor, who has close ties with the school board's most liberal members, appeared in court to personally prosecute Smith for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. He ran on a platform of ending mass incarceration, but she wanted to put Smith in jail for misdemeanors. As a prosecutor, she should have known that the case involving Smith's daughter, the suspect's juvenile court prosecutors assured Smith was being held responsible. He was on house arrest, confined to his mother's townhouse. According to Lancaster, a conviction was expected on October 14th, likely in the form of guilty plea to a lesser sexual assault charge, but on October 6th, according to the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office, a 15-year-old was charged with sexual battery and abduction after police said he forced a girl into an empty classroom, held her against her will, and touched her inappropriately. Lancaster says the suspect is the same boy that allegedly attacked Smith's daughter. What follows, based on extensive exclusive reporting from Loudoun County, is part of the developing story involving Smith's and school's system. So this was broken by the Daily Wire. They had the report is like 5,000 words. Some other people have picked it up, like Daily Mail and so on. But you can, it's behind a paywall, so if you're subscribed to Daily Wire, you can read the whole thing. Ben's talked about on his show today. Michael Knowles has talked about it. I listened to like both of their shows today, but it's a pretty crazy story. And I was listening to Ben talk about on his show earlier, I just got so upset just thinking about a father being in that position, knowing what had happened to their daughter, trying to warn everyone, and this ideology just being so insane that they cannot see anything beyond their cultish ways, their cultish methods. They're so dead set on, like, when Dave Rubin was, he's a classical liberal, he considers himself, but when he was like more on the left, he said as a liberal you're always taught or told that you're supposed to protect the other, and but then he realized that that's not what a lot of the policies or whatever was doing, and he got really challenged when his breaking point was when he had an interview with Larry Elder. And so Dave Rubin was talking about, he's like, well, Larry Elder said, give me an example of systemic racism. And he said, well, policing. And so Larry Elder started like breaking down numbers, and Dave didn't know how to like deal with it, like with the ideology. So he began to like open his mind. He's like, maybe I've been sort of wrong. And there's, and kudos to Dave and people who are willing to be open enough to be wrong on the issues. But there's a lot of people who would just rather march off of a cliff than be wrong, and they'll take you with you. You have to go down. I mean, they'll take you with them. You have to go down with them because they can't just stand not being correct. And they're devoted to their ideology like it's a religion. So a father saying my daughter was assaulted, and you have someone who is like supposed to be, I don't know, an ally, a protector of women or whatever. And she says, I don't believe you. I don't believe your daughter. They won't listen to this man. And he's painted like the villain. I can't imagine what my dad would have done. Oh my gosh. Pastor burns down local schools. I'm joking. But I my gosh. I can't even imagine what that felt like, and how hard it must have been for him all this time, them lying and covering up this story. I said in my title that there's a war on fathers and on daughters, or just kids in general. Because I remember back when Obama really started pushing this stuff, and there was a case, they were trying to deny federal funds for a school that didn't want to accommodate someone who said they were trans. But I believe that same that boy who wanted to go in the girls' locker room and said he was a girl did like girls. So you had a similar case, and they were like obsessed with this, and now you have, I know, probably you have that ideology returning. Like, people think that Trump was, I don't know, just came out of nowhere. No, he was like birthed out of people being sick of everything. People who don't realize that Trump won because there was a big cultural war going on, wake up. And hopefully we have a nice red wave after this. And I keep telling you guys, I don't know if it seems like Trump's making some moves, still be campaigning, obviously, like he wants to come back, but a lot can happen from now to that time, and he'll be as old as Joe Biden is. I don't think he'll be as, far gone as Joe Biden is, don't get me wrong, but a lot can change, and we can't depend on just one person. You have to make a difference. Other politicians that you vote for have to make a difference. Parents, you can make a difference. That's why they're trying to stop you. That's why they're trying to make it so hard. That's why they're trying to demonize you. That's why they're trying to demonize parents like him, because they know that you can do something. That's why they're having a hard time probably in Virginia. They're very concerned about this race for governor. They're going to break out their big guns. They're very concerned. And they should be. They should be. And I hope we have a shakeup in a lot of places, because Democrats need to be afraid, because if they cannot be held accountable for their psycho ideology, they're just going to keep pushing, and we're going to be sitting there wondering, twiddling our thumbs, saying, what happened? So if you could, wherever you're watching this from, if you're close to that area and you want to campaign or something, do something. Do something. And one of the reasons what Matt Walsh, I can't remember if he went to the school board meeting before or after, this former governor who's running again got up and said this.
Veto books, Glenn, not to be knowledgeable about it, also take them off the shelves. And I'm not going to let parents come into schools and actually take books out and make their own decision.
You vetoed it.
So, yeah, I stopped the bill that I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. But, I get really tired.
So, yeah, he said, I don't believe parents should be determining what's in the schools. They're the ones who are fitting the bill. And that was, I believe Loudoun County is also where parents were finding like books that were not being like assigned to be read in class, but were in the library. It had some really sexually explicit content in there that just should not be there in a school, not a high school or middle school or anything like that. So and it's not that people want to have like a book burning or something to that degree, but it's like, protect your kids. Protect your kids. Like, they get the older, they would want to read whatever they want to outside of school, and you allow them to read some stuff like that. That's on you, I guess. If they want to read some other things in college and has some work, I mean, they really should be reading things that are really focused on I don't know, whatever kind of educational sort of aspect they can get from the book. Shouldn't just be like trash with no value. But parents were concerned. And then you have people who have this ideology of the parents aren't the ones who are supposed to get the final say, not in the schools and not even in the home life. Here's Education Secretary saying crazy stuff.
Fairly quick answers here because I want to get to Secretary Becerra. Do you think parents should be in charge of their child's education as the primary stakeholder?
I believe parents are important stakeholders, but I also believe educators have a role in determining educational programming.
And I think that's going to be a little out of focus, what I think you're going to find across all elements of education. Since they pay the bills, they raise the kids, they probably need to be the primary spokespeople for their own kids' good education.
Yeah, so I know there's a lot of people who want to save public schools, and I graduated from a nice public school. I did have like a few teachers who were very obviously gung-ho about their ideology. I had one teacher who wrote down every day the deaths in Iraq. Like he hated Bush. and there's another one that I had. I guess the ones who tried to overstep their toes were like social studies teachers. But and I could spar with them fine. But I was me. Other kids weren't me. Like weren't involved or interested like I was. And you could just kind of see. I hear things now that are far worse than what I may experience in like high school, and I probably wouldn't put no, it's not probably. I wouldn't put my kid in a public school. I would really like to homeschool, and I was proud that my youngest sister decided to homeschool her kids. But there's people who really want to keep public education going, and they want to fight for it, and I appreciate that too. And I think you got to try to do both at the same time. But man, there's some people really, really, really fighting hard against parents. And at the end of the day, you got to make the best decision for your kid. I appreciate everybody trying to save the whole system, but you really do have to make the best decision for your kid. Do you remember when Chris Cuomo, they were talking about this is a few years ago, about the gender ideology with the bathrooms and so on, and someone tweeted him a question, said, I wonder, we said, what if a girl doesn't want to see a penis in the bathroom? And he says, I wonder if she is the problem or if her overprotective, intolerant dad is. And he says, teach tolerance. Teach tolerance. So if a daughter doesn't want to see a penis in a bathroom, which by the way, I'd totally be that daughter. I'd be like, I don't want to see a penis in the bathroom. That would be me. That would be me. I didn't see a male one until I was like in art school. And man, I was surprised that I knew it was coming. And he was very expressive. So it was very awkward. And I told my dad, I'm a grown woman, and he's still upset. He's like, they could have wore shorts. And I'm just like, I guess they felt like we needed to understand the form. And they were models, not like coming out of model magazines sort of models. They were body models. So not perfect, anime comic book sort of like figures, just people who get paid and you draw their curves. So it was weird, but that was it was a very strange experience for me. But my dad was still like upset about it. So I can't even imagine if my dad was in this position where we said, Dad, there was a boy that was in the locker room and he flashed his penis everywhere, or if he sexually assaulted somebody. Like oh my gosh, I can't imagine this father. I can't imagine being these parents. The hurt, the betrayal that they must feel through all of this. And people like Chris Cuomo making comments. Now, when was that? Let me look at that again. That was in 2017 when that happened, when he tweeted that out. So a couple of years ago. So this isn't obviously related to this incident. But he was bold enough to say that. Now think about this, because Chris Cuomo himself has been accused of sexual assault. But we know his brother, who was the governor of New York, who had to step down because of sexual assault charges, allegations, I guess, which seem pretty solid based off of the evidence that they did. So these folks are like predators, or at least it's a family of predators. And he had the audacity to say that to a man about, what if my daughter doesn't want to see that? And he's basically saying you're intolerant, knowing good and well that there are men out there who would be predators and would prey on women, because he knows people who would do that. Very close relationships with people who would maybe not have to go the extent of pretending to be a different sex so he can go get him in the locker room. But, you don't have to go to those extents when I guess you're the governor of New York. So these perverts have the audacity to pretend like this is so unlikely, so far from reality that it could actually happen. Knowing that they're perverts themselves. Knowing that they're perverts themselves. So this story, like I said, makes me so upset just thinking about this father. This father who was treated so badly. This is why there's some people on the right who don't say back the blue because of situations like this. And I guess they're just doing their job trying to keep the peace, but sometimes they ask you to do orders that aren't, the most upstanding thing. But the way that this man was humiliated when he's just trying to look out for his kid. Besides the sexual assault stuff, they've had some pretty intense, like, critical race theory stuff in here too, with Loudoun County. So here's a breakup of now. If you can recall, I've talked about this graphic a lot. I'm going to back up a little bit. That the African American History Museum had some time ago, when they had like white culture in the United States and like individualism stuff is things that they want to put in the whiteness camp. And they had a bunch of different other stuff, like being polite, being on time, respecting authority, believing there's only one God. I mean, it's just pretty ridiculous. And I've said that this is like the most racist document I've ever seen. I guess in modern times anyway. And it was put out by the African American History Museum, the one that's in DC, the huge one that's like 4 stories. So anyway, there's this big plot. Okay, the left has this big Marxism plot. I saw a friend of mine, they put out a meme the other day, and it's like, it's not even Republicans versus Democrats. It's like Americans versus Marxism. And that's pretty much what it is now. And so they're using race to equate everything sort of like about individuality, love of God and country. Like those things are like whiteness. And whiteness is bad. Whiteness is so bad, and collectivism and is part of being, I don't know, minorities and others kind of stuff. And whiteness is bad. Even if you are white, you have to reject whiteness and you have to come over to our side. So here's a little bit of like critical race theory stuff that they were teaching in this county, with white individualism, fostering independence and individual achievement. Like that's kind of like in the bad corner, and versus like you have group collectivism. And so at the bottom here, they have it highlighted with associated with stable roles with teachers. They have a special role to teach academics and to calculate morals. The teacher is a second mother. Parents' role is to socialize children and respect teachers' authority. So that's like in the good column versus like in the white individualism column, where the teachers and the parents are equals. And that's not even right, because parents and teachers are not equals. The parents, the teachers are hired to do a job, and the parents are the ones. They're the parents. They wouldn't be without them. They're the ones responsible for them, for grooming them, for raising them, for taking care of them. Your teachers are a collective of people who switch out every year. And it's not that I don't respect teachers. I had some teachers that I loved that were great, that were fantastic, that I absolutely adored. But to even on this side, where they're trying to say like this is the bad white side to understand how the world works, that's not even appropriate, because teachers and parents are not even equal. And parents can teach academics at home. Parents are children's first teachers. Like that's white individualism. But in the good group of the color group collectivism, they say that the teacher is a second mother. So these are the sort of things that get pushed in Loudoun County. And this is not alone. Like this county has been talked about a lot recently, but this is not they're not alone here. It's been going on in different places, and even in some red states, there's some counties with some really, really, really blue deep roots where they're trying to push some Marxism. I was at a event. I was asked to speak on critical race theory, and I spoke from the perspective of a lot of things I've talked on the show about how the media covers it and how they're trying to say it's not a thing when obviously it's a thing. And parents are getting up talking about things that they've heard in the schools, things that people were teaching, privilege walks and other stuff like that. And we've heard more about in other states, but parents were concerned. And but their school board and stuff were swearing up and down that kind of stuff wasn't happening. But you're not going to find it just like smack dab in the curriculum. In most cases, you won't. And even like where it's been banned, there have been undercover like videos, not really undercover, but teachers talking and people like exposing them. Not like a deep Project Veritas thing, but people have like exposed teachers saying like, oh, they'll have their students ask certain questions. And like, well, how do you want me to answer this? Like, if you have these particular questions on race, and they'll like try to include it in their curriculum. So they try to find a workaround to still be able to teach critical race theory. And it's fine if you want to cover particular topics, but critical race theory is a worldview. It's a lens. That's how it's described. And if you believe that whiteness is bad and non-whiteness is good, but how come I have to be in a collective? It's a color group collective. I don't know. I'm not what it's like to be Asian. Like, I'm not Hispanic. I'm a Black woman, and there's different subcategories of where people come from, people with brown skin, there is no group identity collective that we all just understand and just accept everyone. Even within races, you see subgroups of fighting, even like the light skins and the black skins and etc. It's just like collective unity doesn't exist. It only exists to destroy and bash white people. It's so darn ridiculous. It's so darn ridiculous. So I don't want to be involved in in the non-white folk. We have to be collective and believe this sort of Marxist sort of pushing. I'm very much an individual. I am very much an individual. I took one of those personality tests. I think I'm like 0.04% or something really, really small. Like when those NGIF tests or whatever. Like, I think my personality might have been architect. I think maybe that's what that was. And the personality test was so dead on. I was like, I could have written this about myself. It was so accurate. But I think I had the rarest personality, especially for like a woman. But anyway, I'm very much an individual. If I have to stand alone, and I believe I'm right on a topic, I don't care if I have to be the only one standing by myself to defend what is right. I don't care. I will do it. I will do it. That's not whiteness. And it's disgusting that there's any sort of implication there, or with the African American History Museum, or anything that these people are trying to push in Virginia and California or anywhere else. But we do have a war right now that is really like, are you going to stand for America and American values, or are you going to stand with the Marxists and try to really redefine our nation? They want to tear down all these institutions so they can remake it in their image. So that's why I do my show every day, because I cannot stand for that. I cannot stand for that. And I have to be the lone voice talking about it. I will. I know I'm not the only one talking about these things. And I don't need to be the only one talking about these things. Other people need to stand up against this insanity. Because if we don't, they will keep pushing it again and again and again. I briefly mentioned like Rugrats as the show started. Um, and I hadn't talked about this when it first happened, when they announced they're doing the new Rugrats show, and then they announced that Phil and Lil's mom, they're the twins, that she was going to be a lesbian. And some people from like the original cast were just like, "Oh, we could kind of see it." And I'm like, that undermines a lot of women who are not feminine in a traditional sense. And yeah, I can see that them seeing that, or that it's not so far fetched. But she clearly had a husband, and she was more like the alpha male, and he was a beta. But there are relationships like that. Maybe that's not a traditional sort of man woman role. But you can't undermine. You're just undermining every relationship like that if you're just like, oh, it makes sense she's a lesbian. But there are relationships like that that work, or at least exist, and they work in their way. But what really upset me was when I read articles of people talking about it, and it would start with Howard who? That's the name of her husband. I'm like, Howard, her husband. Howard, the father of the twins. You can't just erase men. You need them. Men have done some great things. Men have done some not great things, but so women have, man. They're talking about redoing Lord of the Flies and having it like gender flipping and have it being about women. And I'm like, people are like, oh my gosh, why do you have to gender flip everything? I'm like, that would probably be so brutal, because women can be evil, especially to each other. Especially to each other. Y'all know y'all like Mean Girls. But you cannot just spontaneously create a child by yourself. And those kids still love their dad, and they love their mom, and they both work together for those children. And to just pretend like you can just write a man out of existence or have no importance. And then she's a single woman too. So you had a relationship with two parents that was not very traditional, and you decide to just erase that, devalue that, and have her be a single mom when you already had a single parent who was Chucky's dad, who and his wife passed away, but you already had a single parent dynamic. So you didn't need to have the single parent dynamic of the lesbian mom who's going out looking for, you know, lady stuff every night. Why just include why do you why does your search for all things inclusive have to demean and undermine masculinity, especially when they uplift masculinity women? What is it with this war on men? I don't understand. It doesn't help society. They just pretend like men aren't a good thing, like men aren't necessary. It doesn't make any sense. But I guess when you can sacrifice men, it makes sense that you can treat a father like this father in Loudoun County like he's a terrorist, just trying to uproot the system, when he's just there to protect his kid who was abused by a system of madness. I don't know why anyone would stand up for this. And you know what? It's I know a lot of people aren't for it. When Biden got elected and this was pushed a little bit more, there were some African Americans on my pages and stuff that were like, "Oh gosh, no, I'm not for this." I'm like, "You didn't look hard enough on the issues, because Obama, when he was vice president to Obama, they were pushing stuff like this pretty hard. And now they have full power. And Biden, he was pitched as moderate. I'll give you that. He was pitched as that. But if you could just like peek behind the veil with like a little bit of research, just a little bit of research, you could have found out all the crazy stuff that he was saying on their website, all the crazy people that he was hiring, all the crazy people he was placating to, pandering to. You could have known, but you chose not to. And even if you knew a little bit, would it have mattered because they set up Donald Trump as like the biggest racist in the world, and they painted America as racist, and they painted cops as racist, and there was just this whole system of racism that you had to fight. And they convinced you that Joe Biden, who had said like racist stuff on the campaign trail, was somehow saving the soul of America. And maybe you didn't like Joe Biden, but you had a choice to make. And they made it seem like Biden was the more moral choice. And now they support things like this. DOJ looking into these parents, even though that is like if there were people actually threatening administrators and teachers, that would be bad. That'd also be local. Clearly, they want to intimidate people, and they want to not have this be such a big draw. If you remember, I went to a Democrat Party picnic at the Oakland County Democrat picnic. The governor was there. The AG was there. So, Secretary of State was there. They had a justice there. And they were talking about school board stuff. And the chair admitted she didn't know anything about critical race theory. She just convinced herself that all the parents who would speak up against it were racist, terrible people. But at the end of the day, they wanted people to retaliate against the Republicans who were obviously had this thing to form around. They're not willing to draw back from their ideology. They want to keep pushing it, regardless of the fact that they don't know much about it themselves. They want to keep pushing it because we see it and we don't like it. So they have to be the ones opposing us. Even though if you had any kind of common sense and you just looked at the issues a little bit, you would say, you know what? We have a good country and these things are going to tear it apart. But they can't even afford to do that. Last thing I briefly want to mention, yesterday was Columbus Day. I meant to mention it. I actually even had a video that I was going to play of Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about Columbus. And he said, and I don't even agree with everything in the video that he said, but it was an interesting take because he said that he believed it was the most significant thing that ever happened to our species. Because basically the two worlds ended up getting separated as far as humanity. And when Columbus came, and the Vikings did come over, but he said they didn't have really any significant influence in the Americas. And so Columbus coming again, and Columbus coming and was like the species reuniting as one again, because if you have species that are separated for such a long time, they began to speciate and sort of, I don't know, evolving into different sort of things. And he mentioned like kangaroos and stuff, things having pouches like in Australia. He's like, that doesn't happen to mammals in other places. So anyway, it's a pretty interesting video, and it's on it was from the Joe Rogan podcast if you want to check it out. But the interesting thing about Columbus Day is that it started as, because they want to get rid of it and they want it to be Indigenous Peoples Day, because people don't think Columbus is worth celebrating, because they don't think he's a good person, and the atrocities against Native Americans and so on. So they want to uplift the indigenous people and so on. So they want Indigenous People Day and they don't want Columbus Day anymore. But the interesting thing about that is that Columbus Day was started as a way to, I guess you could say, pander to Italians, because there was a lynching that happened and people were obviously upset, and Rome was upset, and they started to have bad relationships with America because of it. And they started to do kind of Columbus Day to pacify that. It was a political move. Washington Post did a story about it. Maybe they published it yesterday. It's pretty fresh. I'm sure you could Google it and it'll be right there. But I said this on TikTok. I did a video last night saying the interesting thing about this is that they're always going to have a new flavor. So maybe you're the flavor of the month, and maybe it lasts longer than that, and you're the flavor of the decade, or a few decades. But the point is that sooner or later, someone is going to betray you and your group for another group. if they feel that it is politically expedient. So maybe you're listening to this and you are the T of the LGBT and you don't care and you want to use whatever bathroom you want, whatever locker room you want, and so on, and you feel that you should be protected. And I'm not saying all these things or bringing this up because I feel that is something inherently that transgender people will do, but there's bad actors who see how protective, even to an idiotic, dangerous way, these people are. So they know that there's cover for people to do heinous things, and there will be maybe little to no justice. So they can feel free to attack a girl in the locker room or in the classroom and have no repercussions. So unless there's some kind of stability, like mental stability, not in the T community, but just like in the people surrounding the T community, like the allies, if there's no sort of balance, you'll just keep saying stories like this, and we'll have to keep talking about them, and my stomach will have to keep turning. So we have to make sure that we just see each other as individuals and that we try to protect each other's rights as individuals, and we uplift everyone's individuals. And that's not a thing of whiteness. But we're a nation who can unify. We're a bunch of unified individuals. And we know that our personal liberty is very important, extraordinarily important. And how important it's more important than your life. Not just your life, it's more important than my life, all of our lives. It's why people are willing to die for freedom, for liberty, put their lives on the line for it, time and time again. If we can stand up for each other and not have to be so me, then we can get to a place that starts to make sense again. We're not there right now. When they push these bathroom agendas and policies, there's no consideration for the women. I would have been so uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable with the girls just because the confidence wasn't there, I guess. So, I go change the bathroom stall or something. So I can't even imagine you're letting a boy into the locker room with me. Why is there no consideration for the women, for the young women? Because you're so invested in the ideology. So just, if you're out there and you're a leftist and you happen to be listening right now, or you're, I don't know, kind of a leftist, or you're sort of a liberal, and you're like, I want to protect the other. There's always going to be another other. There is a hierarchy to things. So people who are like, believe women, believe all women, believe all women, they don't care about those women when it's a transgender person who has allegedly attacked them. So don't be too comfortable being the flavor of the month, because there's always another month coming. So just enjoy yourself as an individual and stick up for your fellow man, is my piece of advice before I call it a quits today. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. I got so kind of busy that I did not thank Brighter Michigan PAC for allowing me to use the space today. So I do want to thank them for being a sponsor. And if I said anything today that triggered you, there is nobody that cares. It doesn't work like that. I just use the space, and I'm very grateful to them for Brighter Michigan PAC. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out the different content that I have on the website. Please feel free to share different articles and check out the different products I have, like the goat hoodie. I do have these in different colors. Defeat Joe Biden, announce white supremacy, with a list of his racist stuff on the back. My mom saw me wearing that shirt the other day and was so tickled the other day. I got pro-Trump stuff, the I am not the victim you're looking for shirt. I also have some seasonal things, like it's pumpkin spice season, so go ahead and act and get that fast. And I got the mugs for the pumpkin spice season. I drew that little chibi Trump myself. And the shirt that Facebook thinks is too dangerous because it could influence people's minds, the My Money, My Business shirt. So go ahead and pick that up, because Facebook doesn't want you to have it. And I think if you're a taxpayer, you should absolutely be represented fairly. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today, and I will see you guys tomorrow. But before, let me just tell you, I'm going to have Tudor Dixon on. She is running for governor of Michigan. So she will be here early as the show starts from 4 to, we'll have like a 20-minute interview. So if you want to hear Tudor Dixon and her goals for the state, make her pitch, please join, tell somebody about it, and I will see you guys tomorrow.